Welcome to Prime 9, the countdown show that covers the very best in baseball, guaranteed to start arguments, not end them. This week, we spotlight the top 9 center fielders in the history of the game. Why 9? That's baseball. 9 players, 9 innings, Prime 9. Like any ball game, we've got ground rules.
Good luck to you.
For starters, you had to have played in the modern baseball era, which we define as since 1901. And in this episode, our center field selections were based on a player's entire major league career. That includes defense.
And he's got it! And he made the catch! Oh, what a catch!
Speed.
Here comes Lofton. And Cleveland has won it!
Offense.
Belted! And I mean belted! And we'll see you tomorrow.
And longevity.
Number 600 for Ken Griffey Jr.
Dozens of the greatest players ever to patrol center field were considered.
Mickey Mantle. Andrew Jones.
Joe DiMaggio.
Gold Glove winners.
Torrey Hunter jumps up. He's got it!
Hall of Famers.
Ashburn steams into third with a triple.
Living legends.
A lot of guys have asked me who's the best baseball player in the world. I have said me many times.
But there can only be 9. And you just might be surprised by the results.
Yeah!
But that's what makes Prime 9 so much fun. It's the ultimate water cooler show because everyone has their own opinion on baseball's best.
The best player I ever saw.
And we have ours. So let's begin with the 9th best center fielder of all time on Prime 9.
In center field, number 34, Kirby Puckett.
Was probably one of the most popular players in his home city of anybody in the modern history of the game.
Well, you'd think they like this guy here.
Provided that sort of intangible effervescence that made you want to watch him.
This little guy, this pudgy guy, this guy who looked like maybe built like a beer keg.
He had that short, squatty body, looked like a fire hydrant.
He looked like a little bowling ball, but man, could he get everything done that needed to be done.
Caught by Kirby!
Having that 5'8" body jump over fences and rob opposing players of the home runs, and he did that numerous times.
Oh, my goodness.
He had tremendous speed, great instincts, great power hitter.
The deep to right field. Tremendous home run by Kirby Puckett.
You couldn't throw a ball by him. It could be high and it could be on the ground. There was not a pitch he couldn't hit.
It doesn't matter if the pitch is low, high, inside, or outside. He hits about anything.
And he was Mr. Clutch at all times.
Kirby was a World Series winner in 1987, and his heroics led the Twins to still another title in '91.
In Game 6, to send the World Series into a 7th game, Kirby Puckett made a phenomenal game-saving catch in center field.
Chased by Puckett. He caught it.
And then he homers in the 12th inning to win the game.
And we'll see you tomorrow night.
Game 6, it was the Kirby Puckett show. Kirby kind of single-handedly won the game.
Yeah!
Glaucoma ended Kirby's career when he was just 35, but he relished the years he had.
He loved the game of baseball, enjoyed every day that he put on a major league uniform.
When you put the uniform on, you play with pride and integrity. Just don't take it for granted because you never know. Tomorrow's not promised to any of us.
Although a stroke took Kirby from us when he was only 45, we remember him in his prime.
I say thank God, thank you. Love you all. Thank you.
One of the sweetest players to watch, I think, play that position.
Edmonds, yes! A miraculous catch to center field.
Center field is a tough position. You gotta sacrifice your body at times, and that's Edmonds.
He dives and makes a catch.
He covered so much ground.
Edmonds on the run. Whoa! Another diving catch by Edmonds.
Was not afraid to run into a wall and maybe even run through a wall.
And he makes another catch. The wall comes apart, but he grabs the ball.
Probably one of the greatest catches I've ever seen was the one he made in Kansas City.
Long run for Jim Edmonds.
It was just a complete diving catch, straight backwards.
Oh, he made a catch! Unbelievable!
That may be the best catch I have ever seen.
Jim's phenomenal fielding skills have often overshadowed his prowess at the plate.
I don't think a lot of people will give him credit for his offense.
There's a try. Forget about it.
He's had some great years in Anaheim.
Look at this. There's no doubt it's gone.
And he did have a couple of enormous years in St. Louis.
He just went about his business in a professional way.
Watch this. Watch him rock and roll. Watch. He's going to rock and roll with his leg. Rock, roll, explode. See? Isn't that beautiful?
So tell the truth. Is Jim Edmonds on your list of the greatest center fielders of all time? Well, consider his credentials.
I guess Edmonds sort of sneaks into that group because Jimmy's approaching, as we speak, 400 home runs and 2,000 hits to go along with his 8 Gold Gloves.
Could do everything. This is a guy that had just as much natural talent as anybody in the game.
Welcome back to Prime 9, featuring the greatest center fielders of all time. You've met the 9th and 8th best. We now continue with number 7.
Duke Snider was certainly one of the great center fielders of all time, as his Hall of Fame induction suggested.
This is one deep to right, way back there, going. A home run for Duke Snider. That is number 400 for the Duke.
Snider happened to play in a period when there were 3 great center fielders in baseball: Willie Mays, Mickey Mantle, and Duke Snider.
Willie, Mickey, and the Duke, people try to leave Duke out, but Duke was a tremendous hitter. He could hit the ball hard.
Boom! Look out.
Duke was the king of the home run in the 50s. He had 5 straight seasons in which he hit 40 or more and had more than 100 RBI 6 times.
Duke Snider pulls a home run over the right field screen.
Snider also had the most home runs of any Major League player in the 1950s and was a very good defensive center fielder.
Snider dazzled the crowd with a brilliant shoestring catch.
He could do anything. He ran well, threw well, shagged the ball. He was a good outfit.
Snider commits daylight robbery with a sensational one-hand catch.
This center fielder was the centerpiece of those great Brooklyn Dodger teams that won 5 pennants in the 50s.
We became a very well-polished machine. We didn't beat ourselves very often. We led the league in hitting and home runs quite a few times. We had a very talented ball club.
And with a World Series title to his credit in '55, Duke is truly worthy of the Prime 9.
One of the defining players on one of the most significant teams in baseball history, a tremendous Hall of Fame player, and that's more than good enough.
Ken Griffey Jr., when you start talking about the all-time great center fielders, how can he not be one of the top 3 or 4 guys that you're going to bring up?
Unbelievable, Ken Griffey Jr. Holy smoke!
He, at one point in the game, did pretty much anything he wanted to.
Junior flying diamond makes the catch!
Great talent, great bloodlines. Kenny had the good fortune to grow up around the game, in the game.
He was the son of Ken Griffey Sr. He wasn't in awe of being in the major leagues.
It should be junior league. I was here first. You should get senior.
Really enjoyed the game. One of his nicknames was the Kid, and he acted like a kid.
Griffey leaps high in the air, and he's got it! An incredible catch by the Kid!
To watch him go after a ball, up the wall, over the wall.
Leaps up and he makes the catch!
I saw the guy cover basically left field to right field. There wasn't a ball that went in the air that he didn't think he could catch.
Amazing catch by Junior as he takes a home run away!
He was so good and so natural. He was just so graceful in doing everything.
But Griffey's grace was not confined to the outfield. The man put up some big-time numbers with one of baseball's sweetest swings.
Very effortless, very smooth. His hitting was something that he was born to do that.
He'd do his little deal and get his hips going and get that little swagger with his bat, and all of a sudden he'd get set. You could see it, his face would light up, and you'd be like, uh-oh.
Belted, and I mean belted! A burnt up goodbye baseball!
Probably a lot of times he would tell you, I'm not a power hitter. You might have heard him say that on occasion.
I'm not a power hitter. I just try to make contact.
I'm not a home run hitter.
I don't worry about hitting home runs.
Number 600 for Ken Griffey Jr.
Junior, you are a home run hitter and have been your entire career.
Unfortunately, a rush of injuries hit Griffey just as he was being mentioned as the best to ever play the game.
He earned a spot on the All-Century team.
The youngest All-Century player, Ken Griffey Jr.
I remember at the time thinking that this is a guy who could make 2 All-Century teams. Of course, things didn't work out that well in the 2000s because of injuries.
There is no doubt in my mind, had he not had all the injuries in his career, that he would have been the man that someday will hit the 756th home run.
We now return to Prime 9, featuring the greatest center fielders of all time. So far, we've profiled numbers 9 through 6, Kirby and Edwards, Duke and Junior. Now it gets really tough, beginning with number 5. Joe DiMaggio was so amazing, skilled in all 5 tools, that fans can only wonder where the likes of him have gone.
Joe DiMaggio had a sense of the game that very few athletes have ever had.
He could throw, he could run, he could hit and hit with power. It made it look easy.
He was my idol. Joe DiMaggio, I thought, was the greatest all-around ball player of all time. He was probably instinctively the best outfielder that ever lived.
He would lope over there and bring it in. He was the smoothest center fielder I ever saw.
Joltin' Joe led the Yankees to 4 straight titles. He had a lifetime batting average of .325 and a streak that may never be matched.
Safe hits in 56 consecutive games, an all-time record.
In 1941, the guy hits in 56 straight games, wins the MVP over Ted Williams, who had 406 that year, and in 621 plate appearances, strikes out 13 times. This is a power hitter.
A truly rare breed that harnessed both power and discipline.
There aren't many people who have home run totals that are that similar to their strikeouts. 361 homers, 369 strikeouts for his career, and more homers than strikeouts in 7 different seasons.
One of the game's all-time greats, who always went all out in playing his way to the pinnacle of his profession.
I saw DiMaggio play 5 years. He never did anything wrong. He was a perfect ball player.
The Yankee Clipper, Joe DiMaggio.
Now, there's been a lot of good center fielders that's down through the years. Tris Speaker tops them all.
We've got him number 4, a man whose career speaks for itself.
Speaker was the last of the 19th century outfielders. He played the style that everybody played before 1900.
Speaker might have been the extreme case, the guy who played the shallowest even among all his colleagues in that era. 450 career assists from the outfield.
Playing so short that he would catch a line drive and then just take a few steps and step on second to record the back end of the double play.
During his 22-year career, Speaker amassed more than 3,500 base hits and finished with a lifetime batting average of .345.
A power hitter for his day. Now, that didn't mean home runs in the dead ball era, that meant doubles.
In fact, Speaker hit 792 doubles in his career, still the most in Major League history.
He's one of those guys who sort of falls through the cracks, but it is clear by the fact that he was an almost instantaneous Hall of Famer that those who saw him remembered him, and remembered him very well.
The great number 7, Mickey Mantle.
The Mick had no pressure on him in '51. After all, he was just replacing Joe DiMaggio.
It's hard to imagine any team seamlessly passing the baton from one all-time great player who will always be in the discussion of the greatest center fielders of all time to another who is also in that same discussion.
He could run, he could throw, he hit well from both sides of the plate, right or left.
The home run for Mickey Mantle.
Mantle, I thought he was the best player of our era.
Certainly baseball's greatest switch hitter, Mantle could stun you with one of his tape measure home runs.
You could close your eyes with Mickey Mantle at bat during batting practice, and the sound of the ball coming off his bat was different than other hitters.
Every time I come up, I was trying for a home run. I love to see it go a long way.
Mickey Mantle follows with another home run.
There's a lot of times I was wanting to get a single, but I still swung as hard as I could at it.
Mickey Mantle breaks a 1-all tie with a blast into the right field stands.
Mantle was such a stallion in the outfield, it's hard to believe he played most of his career on bulky knees.
He hurt his knee in '51, and he played the rest of his career without a real good leg, and that was unbelievable that he played as well as he did with that kind of an injury.
But Mantle played through his myriad injuries. He had a greater purpose in baseball, the good of the team.
I couldn't have stood it if I thought I was sitting on the bench and Whitey Ford was pitching a shutout game and we was getting shut out. If I could have been out there and maybe hit a home run or made a catch or something to help him and I didn't do it, that would have bugged me to death. So I would like to be remembered as a team man. I think I was.
Welcome back to Prime 9, where we're showcasing the greatest center fielders in the history of baseball. Kirby kicked it off at number 9, followed by Jim Edmonds and Duke Snider. And checking in at number 6 is Ken Griffey Jr. Jolton Joe is our 5th best center fielder, followed by Tris Speaker. And with the number 3 spot secured by the Mick, it brings us to the final 2. In the early 1900s, Tiger Stadium was home to a legend. His feats defied belief, and folks came from far and wide to witness them.
Tiger Stadium, that was the stadium that Cobb built. Thousands of people swamped the park every day and every game to see Cobb play and wonder what miracle he'd perform next.
Cobb was a demon on the base paths and a wizard with the bat.
He did lead the league in batting average 12 times in a 13-year segment. Now, think about that. Nobody in baseball history has had a 13-year segment in which they led the league 12 times. He did it in what was the most important category of his day.
Cobb owned the all-time hit record for more than half a century. His numbers were the product of his passion for the game.
Ty Cobb was a player that did everything hard. As soon as he got his uniform on, he was a different man. He hit those bases hard, and he went after that pitcher hard all the time. And that's just kind of a ball player he was.
I think he got a pretty bad rap because he was mean and nasty in the early part of his career. It was that competitive fire that made him so great.
You could talk about all you want. I don't care anybody else. Cobb was by far the greatest ball player ever lived.
Well, we've got him at number 2, which isn't bad. But if this show aired 50 years ago, he'd be the man.
In 1950, there was a poll of who the greatest players were in various sports. Ty Cobb was the winner in baseball. He beat out Babe Ruth. And that sort of confirms the original Hall of Fame vote in 1936. Cobb got the most votes, 222, and that's how he was regarded by people who saw him play.
Well, this is a great day in my life. I'm very happy to be here. I feel greatly honored, the privilege of being here.
Leading off and playing center field from the San Francisco Giants, Willie Mays.
Baseball is just a wonderful game. It's like walking in the park sometime. You go out and you look up in the sky and you say to yourself, boy, this is a beautiful day. Baseball to me was that way.
You knew when you went to the game that he would do something spectacular.
Willie Mays gets a great ovation from the crowd.
Nobody could do the whole package like Willie Mays.
This 5'2" player was best summed up by his longtime manager.
There's only 5 things you can do to be great, and that's hit with power, run, field, and throw. Mays could do it all.
He's the best center fielder that I ever saw. Along with his great ability was the fact that he just seemed to be having a time of his life out there.
Every time I went on the field, I enjoyed what I was doing. And I enjoyed throwing out people. I enjoyed hitting a home run.
A home run for Willie Mays!
He understood that the game demanded more of him than mere excellence.
As he rocks like this. His cap was always flying off his head. So that meant that he must be faster than his cap.
I gave everything I had.
Let me hear you say, hey!
My father, he said, defense is the #1 thing in baseball. If you catch everything comes out there and you can score 1 run, they've got to score 2. So I said to myself, that's a pretty good idea.
That advice led Mays to make the most iconic fielding play in baseball history.
When the ball was hit, I wasn't even worried about catching the ball. I was worried about the 2 guys on base.
There's a long drive, way back.
And I was saying to myself, as I'm running, I have to get this ball back into the infield. What's so amazing about that catch is that only 1 guy advanced.
Willie Mays with a catch, which must have been an optical illusion to a lot of people.
Willie Mays is indeed our greatest center fielder of all time. But there are those who would argue that his greatness goes beyond even that.
Several years ago, at the baseball writers' dinner, they were honoring Mantle, Snyder, and Mays. And Mantle got up and said, I'm sure that Duke will agree with me that Willie was the best of the 3 of us.
You know, people ask me who I think is the greatest player that I've ever watched, and I really don't hesitate, and I say Willie Mays.
I asked Joe DiMaggio who he thought the greatest player that he'd ever seen was, and he thought for a minute and he said Willie Mays.
And almost 40 years since he last played a game, Willie is still revered by his fans.
They seem to love what you did for 22 years. They're trying to reward me with their love. I appreciate all of that.
The Say Hey Kid tops off our list of the greatest center fielders of all time, and it sure is tough to argue with that. Despite their greatness, not one of our prime 9 center fielders ever collected 500 putouts in a season.
Ashburn's great throw nips the Giant catcher.
But Hall of Famer Richie Ashburn, who just missed making our list, did it 4 times in his career, the only man in baseball history to do so more than once. That's our prime 9. What's yours?